So, ladies, gentlemen, and all variations thereupon, there was a time long ago when people of quality, knights and nobles, used to have heraldry, things that mark them out both on the battlefield and in personalised documents. If you look at the Magna Carta, there will be a series of seals underneath as well as the signatures. And that was because a seal was something that you had that could prove who you were and that you were there. Now, I quite like the idea of having a personalised stamp, something I can put onto letters just to give them that little bit of extra touch. Unfortunately, if you look for a personalised stamp, they're going to cost a fair bit. So let's see if we can do it at home, and as part of the course for this channel, let's do it with things we've got around the house, with recycled materials mostly. Now, I've already drawn up several designs and I think I know which one I'm going to go for, so let's just jump over to the crafting room and put it together. So the first step is to cut open a Coke can. Okay, so now that we've got this open and relatively flat, not entirely flat but relatively flat, I'm going to place a 2p piece in the centre of it. And I've used a 2p piece because it's about the right size for what I want. For reference, I believe this is about the same sort of size as a quarter in the United States. I'm not sure about other currencies, but you know, just use a coin that's the right sort of size. Press down, and this is a tool that I use for marking out leather. If you don't have one of these, then you can just use a ballpoint pen or something else with this sort of pointed yet dull shape. And I'm just going to mark on around the outside of the coin, and that just gives a rough shape. So I know that this area in the middle, I'm not sure how well you're going to see this on YouTube, but this area in the middle here is going to be where I can safely draw my design. We're going to put underneath a few squares of kitchen roll folded up, just to give that sort of soft impression so that I can press down without causing too much issue. Now this is going to be the front side, so this is going to be the side that's on the outside that people see. The side with the ink, you can remove the ink if you'd rather, but this is going to be hidden on the inside of the stamp, so we're not going to need to worry about removing that. But it's important to remember this is the inside, so anything we press in on here is going to end up being something that stands out on the actual stamp, and if we press in on the other side, it'll be something that goes in on the stamp. So we're making a negative basically. So the design that I want is just going to be the first letter of my name in Tengwa, which is a B. To press on fairly hard, but don't press too hard because the aluminium is thin. And what I'm going to do is just slowly build up on the outside to make the lines thicker. Now I'm going to keep the design fairly simple, because if we do too much detail, then it's easy for things to go wrong. Things can get obscured. The general rule of thumb when designing is to keep it simple and make it something a child could do from memory. That's your general rule of thumb for designing anything like a stamp, a coat of arms, a flag. If you want it to be a good flag, it's got to be something that a child could draw. Think of the American flag, 13 stripes and 50 stars. Union Jack is just 2 crosses over the top of each other with various colour stripes. And so now that I've got the letter on there, I'm just going to give a little bit of embellishment just to fill in the blank space. I'm going to do that by just placing dots on, but I'm going to do the dots on the opposite side. And I pressed that one there so I could see where I wanted it. I'm going to press in and then go immediately to the opposite side and do an opposing one. Then one down here, one up here, now over to this side, and you can see I've got my right way around, got my letter B with a circle of dots on the outside, so these dots will be pressed into the wax and the bee will stand proud of it. It's gone slightly off on the dots, but it's close enough for my needs. So now we need to cut around the outside of the stamp to make a sort of square shape with the stamp in the middle, and then we cut the corners in order to make folding it up easier. Then place the 2p piece back in the middle and bend the sides up. And I did end up putting in an extra few cuts in between each of these flaps just to make sure that I could bend it into a more circular shape. There we have the basic shape of the stamp. Next we're going to take some water in a bowl and add to it just ordinary PVA glue. I'm going to take some newspaper and soak that into the PVA, get it all soaked and mushed up. I'm going to place that into the middle of the stamp. And the thing with PVA and water is PVA will dry hard, so this is going to be something hard that's going to enable the stamp to maintain its shape when we stamp in. Because only thin aluminium, if we didn't have something that's going to take up the shape in the back, we could end up with just mashing the stamp after a few times into just a plain circle. Now for the handle of the stamp, I've got these 100-piece wooden dowel rods. They're fairly cheap to pick up and they're a lot longer than I actually need, but I thought there might be something quite fairly interesting to try and use to make handles. These are a bit longer than I need, but I'm just going to make use of them while I've got them. And I'm going to use, you could just use the same craft PVA, but I'm going to use a slightly stronger PVA, which is a wood glue. First I'm going to put down some newspaper, because this is probably going to get very messy very quickly. I'm going to take my wood glue. I'm going to smear it along one of the dowel rods. I'm just going to take some more and place it around that one. I've just smeared the glue onto. Keeping that one in the centre. Once I've made a complete circle, I'm going to do the same, put glue around the outside and then put another layer on, just to get the thickness that I want. And then we've built a double layer of circle. And to take the stamp that we initially had, put a big old dollop of wood glue in the middle and press this into it. I'm just going to leave that there a couple of hours till it dries off, and then we'll see what we've got to work with. So the PVA doesn't seem to be holding to the aluminium that well, which I didn't think it would, but I needed to press it into the slots. So I'm going to take some super glue and be very careful with this, because this is stuff that will really stick your fingers together. And then I'm going to reinsert this. This is still soft, by the way. So it's been about 48 hours since I've last filmed. It doesn't take that long to dry, about 24 hours would probably do, yeah, but I've been very busy, so I haven't had a chance to come back to it. So what we've got now is the stamp on the end of the sticks, and there's two more things we've got to do. Cut these down to size and sort out these sharp pieces of metal around the top. Now the sharp pieces of metal, easiest thing to do is either cut some of them off and then put another snip in others, and then we're just going to bend it down into place. And the reason I'm putting the other snip in there, I'm just going to do it again here, is because as you try and bend something like this, a 2D shape into a 3D shape, you're going to get things that pucker, and you can see down here on the corners it goes into a sharp point. The more little snips you put in there, the easier it is to get like a 2D flat surface into a 3D rounded one. You see how the metal flew off there? That's why it's always important to wear something over your eyes. I wear glasses, so you don't need to wear goggles or anything, but if you're not wearing glasses, I recommend putting some sort of goggles or something on if you're going to be cutting metal like that. And once they're bended round, I'm going to find any of the sharp areas that are left, and I'm just going to use a small file and sand off the sharpest corners. And what I'm going to do is, after we've bent everything down, I'm just going to take a small file and I'm going to file the sharpest of the corners, just to try and make it less of a hazard to my fingers. Right, now we're going to cut off the handle to the right size. I'm going to do it roughly the distance of my fingers. Something to keep in mind is that if you're clamping it into a vise, then the vice is likely going to leave an impression on the soft wood. So make sure that you're clamping the bit that you want to cut off. As you can see, once we've sawn off the edge, because these have all been glued tightly together, they look almost as if it's one piece of wood with a textured outside. So that the rough edges will still need to be filed down or sanded off, but that's your handle. And there we have it, a homemade stamp made out of recycled materials. Now largely I am happy with this, but there are a few things I would change about it. Firstly, I forgot to reverse the letter when I embossed it, so it actually says D on the stamp rather than B, but that doesn't matter. I've already got a second handle cut from the top, so I can make another one, and it was literally an hour to make, so other than the drying time for the glue, it's a quick job. So I can make another one lickety split. Now because we aren't able to go too deep on the thin aluminium, we're not able to make a deep defined stamp. So the stamp itself is fairly shallow. You can still see and it's still there, but you know, it's not as good as a stamp you would buy professionally made. Another thing to keep in mind, if you want it to be perfectly round, then you might need to put some more cuts around the outside to make sure it folds around properly. I didn't, but I quite like the way it's turned out because as it happens, it's folded into a hexagon shape. So when I do my stamp, my seal is a hexagon rather than a circle, which is something I quite like because I'm a fan of hexagons. They're perfect shapes as far as I'm concerned. And when you're using it, it's possible you might see that I've used it already and there's a small amount of red wax stuck around the side, and on the seal that I've created there is a little bit that's removed, and that's because the wax stuck to the stamp. Now I'm not sure if that's the wax or the stamp itself because I've never used that wax before and somebody brought it for me, so I'm not sure of the quality of it. But if you don't want anything to stick to the metal, put some cooking oil on there and it will resist the stickage. Now all we need is an excuse to use our stamp. My lord, the outer villages burn. The countryside is filled with marauding orcs and vile goblins. It pains me further to tell you that the westward fold has fallen, and that the soldiers you have posted there have been scattered to the winds. Please, I implore you, my liege, send us at least one cohort of knights, or else permit us the funds to hire a band of adventurers to look to our own defences. Your loyal servant, Bridget.